Welcome along to the Racing Post Ultimate Euro 2020 Betting Guide. 24 teams, 51 games. There can be only one winner. Who's it going to be? Joining me to hopefully answer that question are Racing Post top football tipsters Mark Langdon and James Milton. And also during the course of the show, we will hear from World Cup finalist Didi Hamann, Scotland international Charlie Adam, and also top European football expert Andy Brassell. Really looking forward to it. And don't forget the one big tip from this, you must get the Racing Post Monster 72-page guide. It's free in the edition of Thursday, the 3rd of June, and it's also available from all news agents as a standalone product, as well as being on racingpost.com. A fantastic piece of work. Mark Langdon will be doing the main preview in there. And Mark, in a word, who will you be tipping to win Euro 2020?
France.
Okay, and in a few more words, why?
Well, I was going through, I think the instinct is to right, let's look to take on those at the top of the market, and you kind of come up with all your negatives as to why maybe they won't win. And when you got to France, outside of a difficult draw in terms of the group stage, because they've got Germany and Portugal, there just didn't appear to be any reason to sort of doubt them. And, you know, the price is factored into the draw. It's not like the bookmakers are unaware that they've got Germany and Munich to start it off, and then they've got Portugal, and they've got to play Hungary as well. 16 of the 24 teams go through to the knockout stage. And so once you're in the knockout stage, you're not going to play Germany and Portugal in the last 16. The worst, I looked at sort of worst case scenario, assuming they get through, and it would be England at Wembley in the last 16. That could happen if they finish in second spot, but I'd still fancy them to beat England in that last 16 game. I thought they won the World Cup with plenty in hand, and if anything,
Have they got better?
I think they have got better. I think Benzema is several notches up on Olivier Giroud, and it was a mainly young team. And you saw like someone like N'Golo Kante, what he did in the Champions League final. He's the best player on the pitch. I don't really see a weakness. People say maybe the right back Pavard's not that great, but I mean, if you're going to have one area where you think, he's not too great, let it be at right back.
Gareth Southgate there.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably England have got about 5 better right backs than France, but elsewhere, that team is really strong all over the pitch, and I think they're solid defensively, and the Griezmann, Mbappe, Benzema front three is more than good enough to win this tournament.
Is that a classic case of thunder stolen, James, or do you fancy someone else?
It is. No, I do think France are really strong contenders. I think what Mark was saying about winning the World Cup. Quite often a team that wins the World Cup, it's kind of the end of the cycle, and you have a few emotional retirements, or you have the manager reluctant to be ruthless with these players who've delivered so much. I think that France squad was very young, and they've just got so much strength in depth now. And bringing back Benzema obviously adds an extra bit of quality up front. Mark's mentioned Kante, outstanding for Chelsea. Benzema was fantastic for Real Madrid. Mbappe, top scorer in the French league. And I just think this tournament, coming off the back so quickly after this hectic club campaign, I think strength in depth is going to be absolutely crucial. We've already seen big players being ruled out. There are going to be injuries, and I just think France are really well equipped to deal with that.
It's a really good point there, because they've basically played a kind of season and a third almost non-stop, haven't they? And always at these major tournaments, players go in with attritional injuries and fatigue, don't they? And it kind of manifests itself as the tournament unwinds, and isn't always easy to predict, is it? So is the fact that you've almost got 2 fantastic 11s in the same squad going to be invaluable for you?
I think it will, and also you're allowed to make 5 substitutions. So during a game, the ability to, if it's not quite working on 65 minutes, chuck on Kingsley Coman, who scored a winner in a Champions League final last season, and Ousmane Dembele and Olivier Giroud, if you want Plan B or Plan C, or Tolisso was the most expensive player that Bayern Munich had ever signed at one point, probably not going to play in their midfield. I mean, it's pretty much ridiculous. I mean, Koundé, the centre-back from Sevilla, probably 60, 70 million euro defender, not going to play. And yet, if he has to come in for Varane or Kimpembe, you're not that worried. They're just solid everywhere. It's not an easy start, and you might think, oh no, they've got Germany and Munich first up, and if they lose, the pressure then does build on them, and that's the danger. But like I say, all of that is factored into the price. The fact that it's not an easy draw is one reason why they're 5-1 and not sort of 3-1.
Absolutely, I was going to say that because if you look at the market, James, you've got England, France, and Belgium all fairly similar at the head of the market. If it's not going to be France, who do you think the big dangers might be?
I think England have got a great chance. I think the concern with them, and probably Belgium as well, is that there is a drop off between their first 11 and the rest, which, as Mark said, probably France. That's not so significant. They do have this kind of quality throughout the squad. I think England, maybe you look at the centre backs. If you look at the depth there, obviously not at right back as you mentioned, but and Belgium as well. I think defensively, they've got Thomas Vermaelen still in the squad, who I remember confidently saying had gone at the game when he left Arsenal, which must have been about 7 years ago.
You've forgotten how long ago it was you last booed him.
Exactly, yeah. So I think they have to be respected because they've got pretty decent group draws. Although I'm, looking for bets, I'm not massively focused on the group draws because you've got that safety net of the third place teams coming through. I think that could be interesting actually in terms of maybe the golden boot when, if a team wins their first 2 games, are their top strikers or whoever going to be rested for the last one. So that's one to think about. But of the rest, I think Italy are probably at the prices are quite interesting. Obviously that cataclysmic shock of missing out on the last World Cup, but Roberto Mancini's really kind of got things together, and they've actually got nice group of players coming through, plenty of midfield options. Been winning. I think they've won their last 13 qualifiers on the trot in the Euros and then the World Cup this year. So I think they're coming into the tournament still slightly under the radar, but quite an interesting price.
So France, Italy for you. Mark, away from France. We'll talk about England in slightly greater depth, so away from there as well. Who else do you like, or maybe dislike of the market contenders?
I think of the market contenders, I looked at Germany's team and I thought, it looks decent, but they've just played so bad for so long. You are taking a big leap of faith that, it's Germany, they'll come good, when, that didn't happen in the last World Cup. And I'm not mad on this, they've got tournament pedigree. I just think one group of players might have it, but the next group might not. And so I wasn't mad on them, even though they've got talent. Portugal, the price has collapsed on them. When it was taking place last year, they were a much bigger price, but Bruno Fernandes, Ruben Dias, players like that have done so well in the Premier League. I think people have become alert to Portugal's chances, and I think they're fairly priced without, being value now. Italy would be, I think, an interesting one because there's definite upgrade potential there. And I think Mancini, in a tournament of not great managers, I think Mancini is probably one of the best ones in it. But I think Denmark are a team definitely that could outperform their odds, in terms of dark horses, because I looked at, if you go back to the last World Cup, they drew with France and Croatia, and those are the 2 teams that ended up in the final. So they've got, in sort of horse racing terms, they've got a bit of collateral form there, but they've been playing really well. And then this is a group of players, Schmeichel in goal, Kier has just qualified for the Champions League with AC Milan. Christensen came on in the Champions League final, was one of the best players on the pitch. Højbjerg and Thomas Delaney play for Tottenham and Dortmund. You've got Eriksen in there as well. Poulsen plays for Leipzig. Braithwaite is at Barcelona, although he is a bit of a make-weight in that Barca side. That's just makings there of a really sort of solid 7 or 8 players that haven't got the depth. So you are hoping that they don't get injuries. But, they've done it before. And also the Euros is littered with shocks. Czechs got to the final in 96. Denmark won it in 92. Greece won it in, as well. And even the last one, Portugal weren't fancied 5 years ago.
Wales got to the semis.
Wales, yeah. So I don't know why the European Championship throws up these surprise contenders. It might be because actually a lot of the teams are pretty closely matched, and in a World Cup it's not quite like that because there are some real weak ones. So I just thought Denmark were overpriced.
Interesting. We haven't mentioned Spain yet, James. What's your view on them?
Spain are one of the teams I've found it hardest to kind of predict, really. They're looking at their group. They should be confident of going through as group winners. But I just feel, the Spain sides who dominated these tournaments just had that real steel and the kind of big players throughout the spine of the team. And obviously no Real Madrid players at all in this.
Still can't get my head around
It's
that.
extraordinary.
It's incredible,
It's
isn't it?
extraordinary, yeah.
Particularly when you got ones from like Brighton and Leeds, Wolves. Yeah. It does feel very odd.
Yeah, they just leave me a little bit cold in terms of I don't want to get too kind of jingoistic, but sort of.
You're not going to accuse them of bottling, are you? Going back to the old choking accusation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the good old days. No, just kind of big characters, leaders down the spine of the team. Yeah.
Is there an outsider that you like, James?
The ones I'm quite interested in are Turkey, actually, who bring a real kind of element of chaos to proceedings. I think they've had about 3 or 4 3-all draws in about their last 10 internationals. They beat the Netherlands 4-2 in their first World Cup qualifier in March. Then beat Norway 3-0 with a clean sheet against Erling Haaland, which was impressive. And veteran striker Burak Yilmaz, an amazing season with Lille leading them to the title. And they're scoring plenty of goals, but we'll see.
OK, Mark mentioned Germany earlier. It's time for our first guest. Joining us now on the line, I'm delighted to say World Cup finalists, Champions League winner, Liverpool legend, Didi Hamann. Didi, welcome along to the show. Now then, I want to start off on a slight, not a downer, but you played in the World Cup final, obviously legendarily. I was just looking through your record in the European Championships. You played in about the only 2 tournaments where Germany didn't get out of the group. What went wrong?
We never won a game, Bruce.
Amazing. Incredible.
6 games, yeah. Well,
amazing.
2000, a lot of World Cup winners left after 98, the World Cup winners from 90. So, we had to gel a few young players and we just didn't have enough. And so 2000 was a bit of a write-off. Then we had, obviously, 2002, we probably could or should have gone one further. Ballack was suspended in the final against Brazil, unfortunately. We still had our chances, and then we went to the Euros pretty confident. And we played the first game against the Netherlands. We're winning, gave the ball away cheaply on the corner flag, and then Van Nistelrooy scored and equalised about 5-6 minutes to go. And I think if we had won the game, well, it's always easy to ifs and buts, I don't want to make excuses. I think the tournament could have been different if we hadn't conceded it like goal against the Netherlands. But hey ho, here we are. Then the last game we had to beat the Czech Republic, who were already qualified. We went 1-0 up, and we ended up getting beat 2-3-1. So, the European Championships been ones to forget for me. You're right. Thanks for reminding me.
One thing about that, though. Sorry about that. Yeah, going into the European Championship. For the players, is it just as big a deal as the World Cup, or is there a bit of a difference in how the players view the Euros?
Well, you've got to ask every individual. I always felt that the World Cup is the summit. The World Cup is where the best teams of the world play. Having said that, it's probably harder to win the European Championships because usually a World Cup is the European teams plus Argentina and Brazil. So in terms of winning, because obviously you've got more European teams in the competition, I don't think, in the World Cup, usually, you get out of the group. If you look at the groups now in the Euros, obviously it's a different format this time with 3 teams qualifying. It's a bit different, but usually in the World Cup, you can pretty safely say we get out of the group. I think in the Euros, twice we had tough groups. We had the Czechs, we had the Netherlands, 2000 we had Portugal. For me the World Cup was always the tournament, but obviously the European Championships is one that you want to win as well. But as I said, it's probably not easier winning the European Championship than the World Cup.
Well, I mean, winning it's going to be difficult. Picking the winner is going to be difficult, Didi, isn't it? It's wide open. There's a lot of teams can win it. Have you been able to narrow it down to a fairly small group, or do you think it is wide open?
Well, I think in general, what we've seen Paris not winning the league. We've seen Juventus nearly not qualifying for the Champions League, I think Bayern Munich were probably the only runaway winners. Having said that, City obviously put it to bed in January, February with that fantastic run they had. But I think you've seen that the top teams struggle and had problems in the domestic league because they played so many games. You know, the Champions League tournament last year, which finished in Lisbon, they had to play an awful lot of games, these top teams. And obviously the top players of the top nations, they play for these biggest and best teams in Europe. So what they've been through in the last 15, 18 months is unbelievable. So I think it gives chances to smaller nations. Winning is always, different. I think you can knock one out in a knockout game, but obviously you've got to knock 2 or 3 out to win it. The ones I do like are I think France has got the best squad. I think there's no secret if you look at their squad, Upamecano, who's been one of the best centre-backs in Germany, is going to Bayern Munich. He didn't even make the squad. He will probably the first on the team sheet if he was playing for Germany. Other fancied ones, I've got to say, I do like Portugal and I do like Belgium.
Yeah, I mean, what about England? Do you think that there's a lot of people saying that maybe goalkeepers, centre-backs, a slightly weak area for them? Where do you think it might go wrong for them?
Well, I think that the goalkeeper would be my biggest issue. I'm not sure whether he's got the temperament to be top class. It's one thing being a talented, a good goalkeeper, which he is, but I think you need the temperament for it as well. And I think he's volatile, and some of the antics I just don't like. And the goalkeeper would be my biggest worry. I think they've got some good ones behind him. Obviously not for this tournament. Maybe in 18 months' time for the World Cup. And I just had a look at the squad. Obviously, they took 6 or 7 players out yesterday. It doesn't seem a well-balanced squad for me. He's only got, what do you mean only? He's got 4 centre-backs. Yeah, he says, well, Kyle Walker can play in there. I think he maybe should have taken another centre-back. He's taken 4 right-backs, which baffles me. All very good players in their own right, but why on earth would you take 4 right-backs? And then he's only got, I think, 5 central midfielders. And you would think that 2, maybe 3 will play. So if you get an injury or on suspension, you've got to start juggling around. And I don't understand why he's taken 10 or 12 forwards and wingers. And in the middle, I think they're very, very lightweight. And I think some of the selections he's made, I couldn't really understand.
Interesting. What's the mood in Germany going into the tournament, Didi, and how do you view their chances?
Well, I think we struggle at the back. I think we are at the back. We are average at best. We are very strong in the middle. I think midfield is probably our strongest suit, but then again, you can only play 2 or 3. And we haven't got a goal scorer. You've seen Timo Werner. He's trying. He's doing everything. His stats are not as bad as people may think, but at the same time, he just missed too many clear-cut chances for Chelsea. So he's going into the tournament, I think, pretty well. I wouldn't say low on confidence. He's a Champions League winner, but I think his confidence could be better and higher. And I probably wouldn't even start with him. I'd probably play Havertz up top with Müller behind. And then you've got Gnabry and Sané on the wing. They are, the 2 players with pace in the team. And Sané, you've seen it at City. I think he's a very good player when you don't need to rely on him. When he comes off the bench, I think he can change games. But when you need a performance of him, when you need to play, which is the case now because he will start, I'm just not sure whether he's got the mentality and whether he's strong and solid enough to say, well, here we go. And I'm going to do 5, 6, 7 things on the wing where I create chances, maybe score a goal myself. I'm not sure he's got it in him. And that's why I think we've got a tough group. Obviously, the good thing is if you do qualify, you probably avoid the 2 teams, Portugal and France, who are at the head of the market. They should get out of the group because 3 points will probably be enough. They should beat Hungary. But I'd be very surprised if there's not 4 or 5 teams better equipped in the tournament than the Germans.
Excellent. So it's France for you, and who might France be beating in the final, do you think?
Well, as I said, I like Portugal and Belgium. Probably Portugal. If you look at Portugal's team, if you look at the best players in the Premier League for their teams, Fernandes is probably the one. The United players will pick Ruben Dias. We know all about him. I think he even won Player of the Year. You know, he's been outstanding. I think he transformed City from a vulnerable team at the back to a team that is conceded probably the fewest goals in the Premier League.
Sure.
And Jota has been injured, so he should be fresh. You know, we've seen what an impact he's had. I think the struggles of Liverpool had a lot to do with him being injured. And then we know all about Ronaldo. It might be his last, maybe his second to last tournament. You know, I think he will want to repeat what they've done a few years ago, where he missed the final, where he had to come off. So I'll probably go France-Portugal in the final.
Brilliant. Didi, thank you so much, my friend. It's great to have you on board for the Racing Post throughout the Euros. We look forward to reading your stuff in the newspaper, and enjoy the tournament. Thanks a lot, Didi.
Pleasure, Bruce. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right then, chaps, a bit more about England, because obviously, they're going into it almost favourites. There's a huge weight of expectation. Where would you, if you had to predict where they'll finish in this tournament, what would you say, Mark?
I think the most likely, and this sounds really pessimistic, I think the most likely outcome, and it's only about 13-8, is the last 16. And
and this is largely because of the draw, isn't it?
Draw, yeah. So, I mean, the only way they keep Wembley as a home advantage is if they win the group, which I think they probably will. But they've got a team that finishes second in that Germany, Portugal, France. Now, from an England point of view, you're hoping Hungary somehow sneak into second spot, and
they've had a hammer blow though, haven't they?
Yeah, Szoboszlai, their main attacking threat by an absolute country mile, has been ruled out of the tournament. Hasn't played since January, so that's I'd be surprised if they did too much without him. I mean, even if you're at home, Portugal, Germany or France is not the kind of game you want in the last 16. I mean, how strong a favourite could you be in any of those games, So,
and there's no way, is there, with Southgate being Southgate, that he's going to sort of say, do you know what, lads, we won our first, or we won and draw. We can,
then you lose
take
Wembley.
it easy in our third one. And
yeah, but then you lose then you lose the Wembley advantage. So, I think you have to try to, just win the group. I mean, you can get overcomplicated with, trying to plot your path to a finals. And I just think that's a really hard game. But if they can get through that last 16 game, I think on paper, this is a team that is one of the best four anyway. And I think the better bet is for them to win the World Cup. They're double the price they are to win the Euros. There's going to be no home advantage for anybody apart from Qatar in 2020. And I think this team in 18 months' time will be even better than it is now. Interesting.
Where are England's strengths and weaknesses, James?
I think, that this crop of attacking midfielders who've come through, which is, it feels kind of very, very un-English, really. You expect one a generation or whatever, and now suddenly Southgate has got kind of Grealish and Foden and Jadon Sancho is almost kind of taken for granted, I think, these days. But because he's playing in the Bundesliga, but an outstanding player and hot property in the transfer market. Mason Mount is another who's had an absolutely stunning season for Chelsea. So it's just a question of kind of getting the right balance with all those talents in there, and obviously teeing up Harry Kane as well, who will score goals. A lot of them penalties, obviously, but I don't think scoring goals is going to be a problem for England in that group.
Defence is still concerning, isn't it? I mean, the two centre halves. I mean, I think Stones, when he hasn't had Diaz playing well alongside him, I don't know if you can say that he's the same player as when he's got Harry Maguire playing next to him. And I think Maguire sort of looks after his own game okay, but Diaz. If people are saying that Diaz was the best player in the Premier League, that would make you a bit concerned as to how much he helped Stones alongside him. And then if Stones and Walker are together without the Guardiola template and Diaz, are they the same? So, I mean, the centre-backs would be a big concern, and the drop-off.
With Maguire as well, he's played so many games for United and obviously got an injury at the end of the season as well. So that's a concern, I think.
Who comes in if one of those two isn't ready?
I think he changes the formation to go to a back three, which is why he has brought in...
So he'll play Walker on the right of the three.
Walker or James on the right of the three, probably Stones in the middle and Mings on the left. I don't think he'll trust Stones and Mings to be a centre-back too. And then you've got Pickford in goal, who... another one that I would have doubts over as to whether he's up to the standard, I suppose, of a a favourite's chance. Those and Southgate would be another concern for me.
I mean, Didi said that very thing, didn't he? Just thinks that he's just unconvinced there. Who's the best of these right backs?
It's very difficult. I think Southgate, when he had the interrogation from the press about why he'd taken so many, pointed out that they can all fulfil different roles. They do all play different roles for their club sides. I really struggle to pick a number one. Really,
I think it depends who you're playing. If you feel like you're going to dominate, then I think Alexander-Arnold is fine. But Reece James, Reece James, the way he looked after Raheem Sterling in that Champions League final, that to me looked like a man absolutely possessed and determined to show that he's got what Alexander-Arnold offers you going forward, and then what, say, a Walker offers you sort of going backwards with that recovery pace as well. I mean,
he's the man.
He's probably Brilliant. The safe. I'd say he's sort of the best all-rounder, maybe. So
you've got England down as probably round of 16, battling for the World Cup. But, I mean, it's hard to be confident about any of these.
It is because, I mean, I think they're one of the best 4 teams, or maybe even one of the best 3 teams, but they might come up against the best team in the last 16 and then you go out and then it's a disastrous tournament.
Also, that they had such a great chance at the last World Cup, the way things opened up for them, and then I think that is still a concern if they do get past that potentially brutal last 16.
When they played against the good teams at the World Cup, they lost, and then in the Nations League, when they got to the last 4, it didn't work out for them in terms of that, and then beaten by the Netherlands, and so you then go, and then they didn't get through the Nations League the second time around when they were in Belgium's group. So there's question marks about them when they play against. I still think there are question marks when they play against a real elite team.
Thanks, chaps. OK, let's get the views of Andy Brassell now, top European football expert. Andy, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. First of all, before we get your take on who's going to win, who the best dark horses are, who the players to follow are, etc., what's this tournament going to be like for a journalist? Because I think you're off to some fairly far-flung locations, aren't you, to cover the Euros?
Yeah, well, as far as current advice goes, Bruce, that's the plan. My plan was to go to Munich and Budapest. Now it's just going to be Budapest. And this was always going to be a really unusual tournament to cover, I think, because, of course, it's so diverse. It's in so many different places. It's a real one-off of a tournament. So I'd always planned to be in London for some of it and away for some of it as well. Basically, just the draw of the group with France, Germany and Portugal in it was too much to stay home.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a ridiculous group, that, isn't it? Does that group contain your idea of the outright winner, Andy?
Yes, absolutely. And I was doing the sums the other day, and I think my final is still France versus Portugal. I think it's going to be a repeat of 2016. Obviously, a stronger Portugal squad than the ones that actually were European champions in 2016. But France are the team to beat for me.
And why is that? Is it just simply the overall quality right throughout and the depth, the fact that they could basically pick a second team that would get to the semi-finals? Is there one particular ingredient? I mean, obviously, the thing that fascinates me is the return of Benzema. Is that just going to be the icing on the cake, or does it potentially threaten to just kind of, I don't know, sort of contaminate the whole pot?
It's a risk. I don't think there's any doubt about that, especially as he was left out for what they'd call extra sporting reasons in the first place. But I think Didier Deschamps is nothing but, if not practical. And he's someone who has fallen out quite spectacularly with players in the past and found a way to bring them back on board. He will have considered the implications of it. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But of course, so much has been made of Olivier Giroud's role in the last few tournaments for France. But the fact is that if you're looking for someone to do that hold-up role, which Benzema, his body has changed. He's talked about it himself. He's a lot more muscly than he was, much better in the air than he ever was when he first arrived in Spain. He's become this central figure now that Cristiano Ronaldo's moved on. And yet, from that Cristiano Ronaldo era, he's used to laying on goals as well as scoring them. And I think if you look at Kylian Mbappe, the sort of return pass he's going to get from Benzema when he feeds it into him, compared to the one, with all due respect, that he would get from Olivier Giroud, is going to be far superior. But you asking me about why I think France are the favourites, of course the depth is very convincing. But for me, it's the fact that they can grind it out. And I mean, this is probably not a great thing to say for neutrals, but I do feel it's going to be a tournament where defending properly and playing fairly conservatively is going to be the key. It's been the key in a lot of recent championships, because top players, when they've got 60 games on the clock, they're tired. You can't play high pressing, counter-attacking type of football. It's very, very difficult to do that. And France showed, and they received a lot of criticism, and Deschamps received a lot of criticism for it back home, that you can, with great players, play containment sort of football. And that's why, for me, France are the sort of the overwhelming favourites, because they have that ability to play within themselves and the extra quality to make the difference when it really matters.
So do you think this could be one of those tournaments where the average total goals ends up being way below, well, not way below, but a bit below maybe market expectations?
Yeah, I really do. And I think you look at some of the key players who could make the difference. I mean, we've talked about Benzema, we've talked about Mbappe. When you look over to Portugal, of course, everything tends to revolve around Cristiano Ronaldo, but they're moving away from that. I think someone like João Felix, for example, who's not just had a really long, exacting season with Atletico Madrid, but he's really struggled to come back from COVID. It's taken him a while to get back to his best. And I can see him having a couple of really good games. I'm not sure if I can see him having 5 or 6 really good games. And that is something that's often overlooked in a European Championship, I think, because sometimes, 3 good games are enough to win you the player of the tournament.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's really interesting. Quick word on England. Where do you think they'll how far will they get, do you think, Andy?
I think so much depends on whether they win the group, because winning the group is going to be a curse, because if they win the group, there's every chance they meet Portugal in the second round. And that, for me, is really tough. So there's so much expectation on England. I'm not quite sure in their ability to play that sort of sensible defensive football and break in the right moments. In terms of the talent, I don't think there's an issue. But I think something that Gareth Southgate has been criticised for is playing that sort of safety-first football. I think that's absolutely the way to go. And if the squad can get on board with him and do that, then I think they can go a little bit further. Thanks
a lot, Andy. One more quick one before we let you go. Is there a dark horse lurking that could upset a few people?
Well, I think you have to look in England's group, Bruce. I mean, Croatia have lost a lot of experienced players. It looks like Dejan Lovren might not make it as well. On top of no Rakitic, no Mandzukic. It's a heck of a lot of experience to go. Daniel Subasic, of course, the goalkeeper, he's not there anymore either. I have a liking for this Czech Republic side. Of course, they're not 2004 Czech Republic, who should have won the Euros. But I look at them, I look at the players who have the potential to get on that sort of level, like Yankto, like Patrick Schick, but also the core of that very, very good Slavia Prague side. And I think international football is so much easier when you can transplant working hearts and working cores of club teams in, because you have so little time to work with the players, particularly now. So I think they'll finish second in the group, and I wouldn't be surprised if they went a little further than people expect.
Brilliant. Andy, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great tournament, my friend. And if you want to be kept informed throughout the Euros, do follow Andy on Twitter. He's one of the best European football experts there is. Lovely stuff. OK, let's look at the groups now. I mean, first of all, I know we did it last time, didn't we, for the last tournament. This 2014, 3 get through in 4 of the groups and 2 get through in the other 2. I can't have it at all, James. I mean, it's so annoying, and it means that, you've got to do that kind of away goals mentality of calculating where you are at any given point. Notwithstanding that, I don't think it's perfect by any means, but, the group betting is definitely complicated by that, isn't it? Because it means that you've got teams looking around and seeing who they're going to play in the next round. Is there any particular group bet that you think, without all the complications of the format, there's a really good value group bet here?
The one that stands out, and I agree, it is going to be a little bit messy, and I think you need to be looking at the kind of sequence of fixtures in these games. I mean, for example, Group B, Denmark and Russia play last, and that looks like the kind of probably the decider finish as runners-up to Belgium. The team I like to win the group are Italy, actually, in Group A. I think they've shown their ruthlessness against kind of moderate opposition all through qualifying, and up against Turkey, Switzerland and Wales, and they've got home advantage all 3 games in Rome. So I think they're kind of a shade of odds on to top the group, and I think they look a decent price there.
I think there's 2 for me, Bruce. The first of all is I want to be against the Netherlands. They are drifting all the time, but I think it's with very good reason. It's not just that Van Dijk is out and Cillessen, the first choice goalkeeper, is out of the tournament as well. Ronald Koeman had started to build something, and then he left to go to Barcelona. I mean, Frank de Boer, and you'll remember him very well. You might not. He was at Crystal Palace.
Blinking his message. A few days. It was nice.
But that Crystal Palace job has not been his only bad one. I mean, and when he was doing his press conference, when he was announcing the squad, he was mixing players up. He was saying that Van der Beek he was in because of the amount of minutes he played at Manchester United, and then it was sort of brought up, and he said, "Oh no, I meant somebody else." And
I know the feeling.
Yeah, but he didn't even tell all the players in the provisional squad that they were dropped out of it. They found out from the press, like he just announced the squad, and so I think he's somebody that. Very quite arrogant and sort of the traditional Dutch way of there's problems in the camp. But to me, I'm looking at their team, it just doesn't look very good. There's a lot of players there that might turn out to be sort of stars one day, and obviously Frankie de Jong and Memphis Depay and De Ligt is kind of the spine of the team, but around it looks very average to me. They're in with Austria, North Macedonia and Ukraine. I suppose it's how do you oppose them, because North Macedonia will probably come last. I did think about backing the Dutch to come bottom at 40-1. I mean, it would take a spectacular collapse for them to...
It does happen though, doesn't it?
They've got home advantage, but if they've lost the first 2 games, North Macedonia did win away to Germany recently. Maybe at 40-1 you throw a dart at it, but I thought Ukraine were definitely the value bet. Austria have been sort of seen as dark horses before, not really done anything. Their squad looks okay. But Ukraine have picked up good results recently against Spain and against France. And they've got 2 players in midfield. Zinchenko, one of them at Man City. Malinowski, absolute star at Atalanta. If they can just defend well, frustrate the Dutch, I think they've got the quality to maybe sort of nick a goal. And there's no 2 ways about it. I think it's going to be a low-scoring tournament. And
well, Andy was saying that, obviously, wasn't he, as well? He feels that everyone's going to be playing this kind of conservative football because everyone's a bit tired.
And that suits somebody like Ukraine, who are quite defensive. And they're around about 7-2 to win the group. I think it's fair enough.
And did you say you had another one for us?
Yeah, so in the Spain group, I like the dual forecast for Spain and Sweden. I think that Spain are an interesting team. I think they will lose when they come up against an elite team because defensively, not sure about them. But I like the midfield. It's not Xavi and Iniesta, but I still quite like the midfield. And I think they've got some decent forwards that will enable them to definitely finish in the top 2 in that group. I think Slovakia are one of the worst teams in the competition, so I'll go for them to finish last. I think Sweden are a much more solid team than Poland, and now colleague Dan Childs actually thinks that Poland could be the dark horses of the tournament. But you're hoping that Lewandowski turns up, but he just hasn't in any of these international tournaments previously. He's done nothing. He's got 1 goal at the home Euros that they had, then got a penalty in the last Euros, nothing at the World Cup. Sweden, were World Cup quarter-finalists, and they've Kulusevski at Juventus, Ishak at Real Sociedad are both, I think, sort of young players on the upgrade, and I thought that Sweden will... I mean, the market thinks they're basically the same team. I think Sweden are better than Poland.
Interesting. It's interesting also what Mark and Andy have said about it being a low-scoring tournament. Do you agree with that as well, James?
Yeah, I think so. In general, yeah. I think for the smaller nations, if you will, coming in, it is easier to set up defensively. And I've been looking at Group B and Finland, who love to defend in numbers, and then their coach has said, look, we're just going to try and do our best on the counter attack effectively. And I think there will be a lot of teams like that, and as we mentioned earlier, the kind of fatigue over after the club season. I mean, you know, for some Wolves players who are at the tournament, they've effectively played 2 seasons back to back, haven't they? And they given their long Europa League run the season before last. And so yeah, I think it's hard to imagine teams, you know, coming out and regularly playing high octane, expansive football.
So we'll be seeing the press even less than Naomi Osaka in the next month. Will we?
Lovely.
Didn't prepare that at all. Okay, guys, so we've done the groups. I think we should talk about Scotland now, and who better to tell us about their chances than our next guest. Okay, now I'm delighted we can talk to Charlie Adam. Charlie's going to be joining the Racing Post team for the Euros with a particular focus on Scotland, but I'm sure he's got a view on the tournament as a whole. Charlie, welcome along. Before we talk to you about who you fancy for the Euros this year, is there a little bit of you, I know you gave up your Scotland career a few years back, but is there a little bit of you thinking, oh, do you know what, I've just missed out, I quite fancied this?
Listen, everybody would have, you know, when we qualified a long time ago, and now it seems obviously through the pandemic and that, but listen, you always think that you're going to get into the squad, but realisation was I was never going to get there. And no, I'm just delighted that the lads managed to get there, and I'll be watching from afar, and you know, hopefully we can get a couple of decent results and we can qualify through the group stages.
Yeah, I mean, with the format, with 24 teams, obviously, and 3 can qualify, you've looked at the group. I mean, do you think Scotland have got a realistic chance of getting through? I mean, if you look at the market, I think it's kind of a coin toss whether they do or don't qualify. Where would you be leaning towards? Not so much through patriotism, but just looking at the squad and what they're capable of. Do you think they've got a decent chance of making that round of 16?
Yeah, I do. I do think that, you know, we have 2 home games at Hampden where I would look for us to try and take 4 points. You'll expect England to win every game. That's because they're overwhelming favourites for it, and you're hoping that the other 2 can try and suffocate each other when they're playing each other. You know, maybe a draw or something like that. So if Scotland can get 4 points, you know, I know that teams have qualified with 3 points before. I think it was Wales done it at the Euros before. So no, as long as we can get 1 win and give us a good chance to do it, then I think it'll be an amazing achievement if we can get out of this group stage.
And if Scotland do have a really good tournament, who are the key men, would you say?
I think you've got to look at, you know, defensively, you look at Tierney and Robertson on that left-hand side. You know, McGinn, Gilmore is a player that I think is a wonderful talent. Obviously, just winning the Champions League with Chelsea. So I think that will be, you know, these are the type of players that can hurt teams. But our biggest thing is scoring goals. We need to find somebody that's going to score us a goal. And, you know, if we can keep it tight defensively, you know, you've got somebody like a Grant Hanley who's very good at set plays and something like that. So, yeah, we'll have a chance if we can, you know, keep clean sheets and he'll be a threat at set plays. Absolutely.
Turning attention to England now, Charlie, do you think Southgate's got it right with his squad? 4 right back looks a bit odd. I suppose for Scotland have got 2 fantastic left backs to accommodate. England have got probably arguably 5 fantastic right backs. He's taken 4. Looking at the overall balance of the squad, do you think Southgate's picked it correctly?
Well, you want your best footballers in the group, and it doesn't matter if they're playing right back or they're left back. You know, you've got to try and have your best players in the squad. But their right backs can play in different positions. They're not just out and out wing back, right backs. You know,
who's the best of them, Charlie? Who's the best of those 4?
I love Trent. I think Trent's got everything. You know, you think he's defensively, people doubt him, but you know, when you have so much of the ball at Liverpool, you know, he's. You know, I would expect England to have a lot of the ball. So with his delivery and his quality that he can produce and put in an area, then I think he's brilliant. But the other lads are there in merit. You know, Kyle Walker's won the Premier League and the Carling Cup. Kieran Trippier's just won La Liga, and Reece James just won the Champions League. So it's a tough decision, but you know, he's went for the best footballers in the group, and you know, they 4 are definitely picks. And I like England's squad. I said before, I think they're one of the first 2-3 favourites in the whole competition. I was swinging for England because of the amount of home games that they're going to play. But I just look at that French national team and the squad that they've got, and they would probably just edge it now for me.
Yeah, I mean, they could put two fantastic teams out, couldn't they? Who particularly in that France team do you think could be the key to them winning this?
I think Mbappe. I think he's a world-class footballer. And N'Golo Kante, how he played the other night in the Champions League was instrumental. You've got Griezmann, who's a wonderful footballer as well. So it's it's going to be tough, but I think it's between France and England who will win the tournament.
Excellent, interesting stuff. Charlie, thank you so much. Like I say, we're really looking forward to reading your views in the Racing Post throughout the Euros. Thanks for joining us, Charlie, and enjoy the tournament.
Thank you very much for having me. I'll speak soon.
So just going back on what Charlie says there about Scotland, he thinks they've got a really fighting chance of getting through to the last 16 with the group being as it is. Obviously, as Charlie says, they're two fantastic left-sided defenders in Robertson and Tierney, and that's going to be the key to get out of them. Where would you see them finishing up, do you think, Mark?
I mean, home advantage is, I think, a factor for them, but I still think that they'll finish last in that group. And I don't think it will be like one of those sort of disastrous tournaments. I think they'll be in every game. But I actually quite like the other teams in the group more than it's not an anti-Scotland thing. I mean, the Czechs are definitely on the up. You look at sort of the club football, Slavia did well in Europa League. And then they played really well against England in Prague. They've competed well against Belgium. They, to me, look like the kind of team that Scotland actually won't be able to kind of outfight because they're kind of built like a Premier League team themselves, if that makes sense. And for all that Croatia have had players with sort of retire, I still look at that midfield. Brozovic plays for Inter, Kovacic plays for Chelsea, and Modric plays for Real Madrid. I mean, you can't be bad, can you, in those situations? Kramaric scored a lot of goals in the Bundesliga. They're an ageing team at centre-back with Lovren and Vida, but I still think it's an okay team and it's going to be a difficult one. So I'll disagree with Charlie there. I think I don't know if he's got a bit of tartan sort of running through him.
There is a little bit. There is a bit.
But I mean, I don't think Scotland will be outclassed. I just think that they're in a trickier group than maybe it looks.
Sure. OK, let's talk top scorer then. I think Harry Kane heads the market, but we've got Mbappe and Benzema and loads of fantastic star names. You've had a good comb through the top scorer market, James. What have you got for us?
I have, and as I mentioned earlier, you kind of you're not certain to have your real star players playing all three group games because the big teams have that safety net of third place. But I do think Romelu Lukaku is the one at the top of the betting to focus on. His goal scoring record in internationals since the last World Cup has been phenomenal. And one at a really big price. I know Mark's quite keen on Denmark. Christian Eriksen at kind of 100 to 1 for the each way play. I was just looking. He's in 106 caps. He scored 36 goals, which is 3 more than Eden Hazard in exactly the same number of games. He's on penalties. He's on free kicks for Denmark. If the wind's in the right direction, he'll probably take goal kicks as well. He's kind of. Had a good resurgence at Inter in the second half of the season, obviously winning the Scudetto. So, interesting one.
We've got a column from Nordic football expert Lars Sivertsen in the pullout, and he talks about Eriksen, and he says that he thinks that English people have just got it all wrong when they say, they're reliant on one player. He says countries of that size think, wow, we've got a player like Eriksen, whereas in England people go, they're too reliant on him, So I think he kind of embraces that kind of responsibility and maybe plays even better for Denmark than what he does maybe for Inter. I mean, I endorse Lukaku. I mean, Belgium have got a nice draw. It takes something spectacular to go wrong for them not to reach the quarterfinals, I would have thought. And I think Lukaku taking on more responsibility now. We don't know De Bruyne's sort of status. He had the injury in the Champions League final. I don't think he's going to play any better with the mask on. I mean, he might play to the same standard, but I think there's a fair chance he plays worse. Hazard, he's been so bad for Real Madrid. This is kind of almost now could be the Lukaku team for Belgium. So I think if you fancy them to go, he's got to be on the list for each way. A much bigger price. I'm not sure he's going to start yet. It's very close between him and Morata, but Gerard Moreno at Villarreal. And one of the reasons I'd go for him is because he's brilliant at penalties. Double figures in penalties, 100% this season for Villarreal. And Ramos is not in the Spain squad, and he used to take all of the pens. So if he can get in there, with VAR doing what VAR does, there could be some easy pen opportunities for Gerard Moreno. He's 66, and then at 150, we've mentioned Italy as maybe being able to outperform their odds. Chiesa plays on the wing for them. I think he's a delightful player. One of Juventus' few bright spots this season. He's 11-1 to be top Italian scorer. I quite like that as well, but I don't think you can back one without the other. You'd be gutted if he wins the Golden Boot. And so yeah, he's 11-1 for that, 150s for the Golden Boot.
Fantastic. Now, there's so many markets and there's all sorts of weird and wonderful things. You can pretty much bet on any team, group position, dual forecast, straight forecast, top team scorers, Golden Boots, probably top assist, the whole damn lot. Is there anything else you've found in your tour of all the little nooks and crannies of the betting markets, James, that you want to put up?
I've gone for Turkey to be the highest scoring team in the tournament, actually, 100-1 as well, and that's kind of twice their outright odds. If they do go deep into the tournament, they're not going to be winning 1-0, I don't think. They are a gung-ho team, so I thought that could be worth a very small stake. And the other thing, going back to Romelu Lukaku, I mean, his player of the tournament odds, kind of 4 times as big as his Golden Boot odds. I know, I think Griezmann did the double Euro 2016. I just think the way Lukaku's all-round game has come on since he went to Inter, as Mark said, De Bruyne and Hazard now, the doubts over them. If Belgium do go all the way, then he's going to be the central figure, really. So that's of interest as well, I think.
Excellent, really good stuff there. And I mean, it's great, isn't it, going into a tournament like this? Obviously, all the bets you have, Racing Post supports, responsible gambling. But it's nice to just suss a couple of little ones and have a quid or £2 there at massive prices. Yeah. You've always got half a chance. What have you got for us, Mark?
Oh, I did the spread copy for the pull-out guide, and I wanted to get with Slovakia in terms of the lowest scoring team index, and then I looked at our fixed odds copy and James had tipped Slovakia to be the lowest scoring team, so I thought I'd best not do that because you've got basically the same bet running in two. But I think Slovakia to be the lowest scoring team has got legs. I mean, Sweden, Spain and Poland.
What sort of price are we talking?
It was 20-1, was it?
I think 10 or 12.
Yeah, 12-1, sorry.
Might be a bit of dead heat action there.
Well, yeah, but I was looking at it. North Macedonia are favourites. They're a team that got a lot about them in terms of ability to score goals. I mean, they went to Germany and won recently. I read some interview with the coach that he did in the new year, and he's talking about being aggressive. He doesn't believe in playing passive football, and all of their talent with sort of Pandev and players like that is in the final third. So they might get one. And I was looking at Slovakia. I'm just not sure who's going to score their goals. You look at their top team scorer and Hamsik, the veteran sort of, I suppose, what is he, creative midfielder, but he doesn't play as far forward as he used to. He's like the favourite, so that tells you that they're not going to score that many goals. They were really dull in the 2 playoff victories over Ireland and Northern Ireland. They might get none, so that would be one. And I do love top team goal scorers. I just think it's one of the joys of the tournament, really. Forsberg for Sweden was one that stood out. Sabitzer.
Give us a treble. Top team scorer treble.
Okay, well, I'll go for a patent because they're all big prices. Yeah, sure. They're all big prices. So I think Federico Chiesa for Italy, he's definitely somebody that attacks down the wings and has found his shooting boots in recent weeks. So I'd go for him. I like Sabitzer for Austria. I don't think they'll score many goals in their group, so it might only take one. And he's somebody that can get on set pieces, long range shooting. So he would be the second one. I thought Forsberg for Sweden, and I know that James liked Ishak in that market, but Forsberg is somebody that has played up front at times for Leipzig this season, and I just wondered if Sweden might go down that route now Ibrahimovic is injured. And then just as a single, I'm actually splitting stakes. Lewandowski takes out so much of the Polish market, and given his international tournament record, and like his strike partner Milik, who's not a bad player, is 9-1, and Zielinski, who plays for Napoli, is 14-1, the attacking midfielder. Again, I mean, if it's not Lewandowski, I'm pretty certain it'll be one of those two. And if you combine the 9-1 and 14-1, I think you've got a great bet against Lewandowski.
Ooh, fantastic. Not a betting-related question, but finally, who's going to have the best tournament, BBC or ITV, James? Looking at the squads.
I don't have a strong opinion on that, really.
Could be a dead heat, could it? It should be interesting, shouldn't it? I mean, there's a few new faces on there, isn't there?
There are. I mean, I think Gary Neville is one of my favourite ones. I know he's what was it? Jurgen Klopp says he's got an opinion on everything, and he really has. But I quite like that. I mean, Souness is somebody now that I've probably had enough of, but and that maybe negates that slightly. But I'd edge towards ITV, just ever so slightly.
Okay, I think that's about the one thing they're not betting on. Okay, thank you very much to Mark and to James. Thanks also to Didi, to Andy and to Charlie. Thank you most of all for watching. Don't forget to pick up the Racing Post's ultimate guide to the tournament and stick with the Racing Post and racingpost.com throughout the tournament for all the best betting advice.